First video on this channel. Anytime I make a new channel, my first video is a video with no notes. No notes. And I'm going to talk about the overall theme of this channel. And that is segregation. At this point, we need to question integration. And keep in mind, we've only been integrated for about 53 years. We were living under segregation for a longer period of time. Under integration, things have gotten worse with time. The more time that has passed, the worse things have become. Race relations have not improved under integration. Some people have compared the race tension today with the race tension that the population dealt with during Reconstruction. And that's serious. That was the formation of the Klan. That was when black codes were being instated. Right? We are living in very troubling and unstable times today. And I think it is time that we questioned the decision to integrate. And I believe that the best solution for both races is complete separation. Now, it is fascinating to me to hear black people's response to that suggestion, because I always point out that if we separate, as long as it is separate but equal, you should have no problem with that. But black people today are the same way they were during the 1960s. During the 1960s, they should have been fighting for separate but equal, right? During segregation, or when they instituted segregation, they made a promise that it will be separate but equal. The problem came from the fact that they were unequal. So it would have made sense for black people during the 60s, 50s, and 60s to fight for separate but equal. Instead, they fought for integration because black people collectively were suffering from Stockholm syndrome. The true reason for integration, or black people's fight for integration, was black people wanted to earn white people's love. They wanted to get white America to get used to them, to get to know them better as people. Black people had the mindset of, well, if we're integrated with white people, they will be forced to get to know us on a more personal level, and they will see that we are just like them, that we are human beings just like them. They will see our humanity, our big hearts, and then race will not be a factor. Now, black people listening, you know that I'm telling the truth. That was the true reason for black people's push for integration. It had nothing to do with a desire for equality. Nothing whatsoever. Black people should have, if black people were in their right state of mind, they should have been fighting for complete separation. Now, there was a large portion of the black population, well, not too large, about 1 million people or so, who were pushing for complete separation. Many of you remember the Nation of Islam was pushing for complete separation. But it wasn't just the Nation of Islam. There was a lot of black people who were not even members of the Nation of Islam. Right? I saw even a TV show where a little kid, a preteen, I think it was a girl, she was like, I don't want integration. Those people don't want me around. I don't want to be around them. But you see, the elite class, that is white America, right? Black people are not members of the elite class, of the ruling class. The elite class will only endorse a black movement if that black movement or organization works against the best interest of black people. So you had white people who supported integration. Or ultimately, obviously, it was the government who agreed and, brought in integration, allowed full integration. Ever since that point, the 60s, people need to understand that the elite class have been working diligently to divide and conquer, not just along racial lines, but along class, gender, and everything else. If you remember, it wasn't just a race movement during that period of time. You also had the feminist movement, right? You had the gay movement to an extent. You had people separating themselves. And this was a tactic implemented on the population by the elite class to divide and conquer. And they were pushing things onto the population that was against the population's best interest. Integration was against the best interest of both blacks and whites, both groups, but more so against the interest of black people, because black people were and still are powerless. Black people are not the CEOs. They are not the owners of businesses. And this is why I say that black people were out of their minds to push for integration, because you got to keep in mind, black people they literally allowed their own businesses to crumble once integration was allowed. They literally abandoned their own businesses, their own institutions, and their own business institutions rotted and crumbled to the ground. And now, what do you hear black people talk about today? All you hear them talking about is we need businesses. We need our own institutions. We need our own hospitals. We need our own doctors. We need our own schools. You had all of that before integration. Some of the best doctors and nurses in the country were in black hospitals, movie theaters, schools, and they were willing to abandon all of it, let it crumble to the ground if they were allowed to integrate, to shop in white businesses, institutions, to go to white hospitals. You see, black people collectively cut their own throats, sacrificed everything they had, and became as dependent as possible, as they possibly could, on white America. You have to understand, integration was a way that black people returned to the plantation. You got to understand, during slavery, that was another form of integration. You were so integrated with white people during slavery, you literally lived in the same home with them, lived on their property. You wore the clothes that they once wore. It was a form of integration. And that benefited white America because it gave them more control over black people's existence. And the same thing happened with integration during the 60s. And that is ultimately why the elite class pushed for integration, allowed integration. They knew it would give them more control over black people's existence, their mind, their economy, their means of social relations, their culture, and everything else. And you notice it gave them more control over black music. Now, black people's primary culture in this country is our music. Everything else was taken away. The religions, the names, all of that. Customs. We kept some elements, but our music, that's something that's in our genetic memory. And black people literally created almost all forms of music in this country. Rock and roll, blues, of course, African spirituals, funk, jazz, rap, and white music was pretty much a spinoff of black music. Like country music was a spinoff of the blues. Of course, white people adopted rock and roll. Now, white people did invent heavy metal. We had nothing to do with that. That is a type of music. They didn't get that from black people because it has absolutely no rhythm. All black music had rhythm. And heavy music is just noise, just straight up noise. Right? So after integration, you started to notice how white people had the ability to dictate the type of music black people created. It got to the point where rappers had came public and said, yeah, if you want a record deal, if you want to make it, then you have to talk about drugs. You have to talk about women as bitches and hoes. You have to talk about popping guns, shooting other black people. Right? You have to promote a degenerative culture for your people if you want to make it. And that was to our detriment. That worked against black people's very existence. Our music is extremely influential. Extremely. Our youth worship these rappers and entertainers and singers like gods. Literally like gods. They shape their entire existence after the image and words of these people. Our music is extremely powerful. That is why, historically, African people have always implemented their culture, values, and customs through song and dance. Always, when it is a spiritual moment, something, anything, you find black people in America doing the same thing you saw black people doing in Africa. Song and dance. Song and dance. And when you put a particular message in black people's music, if it is negative, that is going to almost destroy those people. So they got control over our major form of culture, our music. Integration also gave them more influence over our entire entertainment industry, movies, our interests, the things that we value. You know, black people were so happy to return to the plantation. Black people's family started to fall apart. Keep in mind, during segregation, segregation was our golden era, black people's golden era. Around 80% or more of black homes were two-parent homes. It wasn't until after integration and the formation of welfare, and they tell you if you want welfare, you have to kick the man out of the home. You need welfare because we have deindustrialized the society, moved these jobs overseas, moved them into the suburbs, We also destroyed hundreds of black businesses. They destroyed Black Wall Street, but black people rebuilt Black Wall Street. Very few black people even know about that. They just think Black Wall Street was destroyed and that was the end of it. No, black people rebuilt it. What ultimately destroyed Black Wall Street and Black Wall Streets all across the country was integration. Integration. And it seems a lot of black people today don't understand that aspect of history. Integration destroyed us economically, destroyed our families, destroyed our families. So it wasn't until after integration did you have this single mother epidemic. And now you look at race relations. You look at the Kenneth Clark doll test, Brown versus the Board of Education. When Kenneth Clark conducted that test and he saw that black kids chose the white doll whenever they asked questions like which doll is the pretty doll, which doll is the good doll, so on and so forth. When he got the results of that test, he concluded that the reason they chose the white doll was because of segregation. Kenneth Clark was wrong, because decades after integration, they conducted that doll test again and got the same results. I think they conducted it 2 or 3 more times, got the exact same results, which tells you segregation had nothing to do with black people's inferiority complex, nothing to do with it. What sparked black people's inferiority complex was separate but unequal. Because we go into the world and when we see a water fountain for whites, a water fountain for blacks, the white one was nice, clean, and modern. The black people's was dingy, old, falling apart. You saw it with schools, immaculate white schools. Black people's schools, holes in the wall, holes in the floor, the building falling apart, very weak infrastructure. Same with businesses, movie theaters. White movie theaters were beautiful, large, and immaculate. Black people's small, rundown, falling apart. That does a serious number on the human mind. It conditions you psychologically through association. So black people would associate blackness with negativity, with less than, unequal to, white, with falling apart, right? With negativity in general. And that is why instead of fighting for separate but equal, black people with their destroyed mentality that had been thoroughly conditioned over decades of separate but unequal instead pushed for integration. Because the true reason for that push for integration was to get white people to love them, which is itself a sign of a mental disorder. Black people literally measured our own self-worth on the degree to which white people accepted and loved us. Our self-esteem was dictated by the degree to which white people accepted and loved us. When you have to depend on other people's acceptance for your own self-esteem, and that is how you measure your own self-value and self-worth, you have a mental problem. That mental problem was Stockholm Syndrome. So black people after slavery and white people should have gone through decades of rehabilitation. The true root problem in this country is that it has a very destructive and negative, despicable root and foundation, founded on the enslavement and exploitation the literal slaughter, physical slaughter of black people. When you have a country with that type of beginning and you never address it, those two groups will never get along. Race tension in this country will never go away. It may fluctuate, may go up and down here and there, but it will never go away. Because even under integration, we have remained separate but equal. We've been integrated, but we've remained separate and unequal. Matter of fact, we have become even more unequal because at least during segregation, we had our own stuff and we did not value it because it was not as good as white folk. And we did not simply want to fight for separate but equal because that would mean that we would still be separated, right? Can you imagine? Our schools got improved, our businesses, we got modern water fountains, the whole bit, movie theaters, all of that. But yet black people would have still felt empty inside because they were not integrated with white America. Black people have to get over this slave mentality of wanting to always exist under master's care. Black people do not even believe in themselves to be able to take care of themselves independent of white America, which is mind-boggling because black people have people, there are black people in every element of society. We have black people in, government, politicians. We had a so-called black president. You know how to run a country. We just have no confidence because we have a slave mentality that if massa is not taking care of us, then we will disintegrate and fall apart, right? A lot of black people say, well, if we segregate or if we separate, then white people will come in and destroy us. They'll set off a bomb in the black states or the black areas. They'll come and destroy us. Listen, that is a risk you should be willing to take. No other group on this planet has that type of fear. No other group is afraid to exist among themselves, by themselves, in their own nation, in fear that some other group will come in and destroy them. You have to get over this fear of existing as a free people in this world, and that is ultimately all black people want. We just want to live our life in peace. We don't want to live with racism. We are tired of dealing with it. Every black person in this country is half crazy. Look at you today. Black people, every last one of you are partially crazy, partially out of your mind because you are living under the rule and domination of another people. And that is not normal for any group to have to deal with. And yet we are expected to simply deal with it as some sort of natural way of life. And this has been the case ever since slavery. That we have been expected to just accept being dominated by people, exploited by another people, ruled over by another people, and under another people's influence completely. We are tired of our images being projected in a negative way in the media and entertainment, raising our kids to view themselves in a negative light, to view themselves as less than. We are sick of these stupid scientific studies, fake scientific studies, scientific racism that says on average black people have a lower IQ. I mean, the forms of abuse that comes out of white America is mind-boggling, and it's non-stop in every aspect, even education. When you look at the textbooks at these universities, they'll have photos of each contributor to those textbooks. Sociology, psychology, they'll have a photo of the sociologist of these psychologists who contributed to different chapters in the book, they're all white. Maybe you have an Asian here and there. None of them are black. What is that teaching the kids? Black people, you are not intelligent, and you have not contributed to the intellectual advancement of mankind. We've had our history distorted. People are constantly trying to tell us that Egypt was not a black civilization, knowing damn well that it was. Our history has been tampered with and completely left out. We have an entirely different history from white people. White people only want to teach us white history, further instilling an inferiority complex into us. We need to be separated. I'm going to cut this video short. We need to be separated. I think it's fair to say that integration has not worked. It has been a massive failure. I have had this discussion with white nationalists. Black people, you got to understand, several white nationalists are very, very rational people. They were the people among the white population who understood what was going on during the 70s. They understood that these people are implementing something that is against the interest of both blacks and whites. That this integration, this was not the way to go. On the outside looking in, I know a lot of black people just looked at those white people as racist. Many of these white nationalists knew what was going on. I've had this discussion with many of them. They're very rational people. They understand that, look, many of them are like, look, we don't have nothing against you. We just believe that we should be separated. I agree with that 100%. Look at the world today. We have not been this divided racially in a very long time. Integration has been a huge failure. It is time to not only bring back segregation, we need to implement complete racial separation. These two groups simply cannot get along in peace. The only promise that has to be made, it has to be separate but equal. Right? I know a lot of people say, oh, we can't go back. No, we're not going to go back to that form of segregation, which was separate but unequal. We have to bring back separation and make sure that it is separate but equal.